In the manga One Piece, there are many characters whose origins are still unknown. Which character's origin are you most interested in? Luffy? Shanks? Dragon or Caribou? For me, it's Nami.
Why is Nami able to predict the weather?
Why was she abandoned in the Oikot Kingdom? Who are her parents?
I've had a theory about Nami for years. First of all, I would like to share the conclusion of this theory. I think Nami came from the past. Her ancestors came from the ancient moon city, Birka. I understand that some of you might think I'm crazy due to lack of sleep. I know it's a very strange theory. But I've discovered some reasons why we could speculate this way.
Some of them can only be noticed by reading the original version.
So I'd like to share them in this video. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Dawn Dusk.
In this channel, I share theories and analyses about One Piece from the original language perspective. Because in the latest chapters, we can find many clues from Oda Sensei by reading the original version.
So if you're not already subscribed, you're always welcome. Let's become Nakama beyond borders. First of all, let's take a look at Nami's past.
According to Vivre Card and Chapter 77, Nami was found in the Kingdom of Oikot. This means Nami was an orphan in the Oikot Kingdom. Then she was found by Nojiko, who took her in her arms until she found Belma. When Belma asks Nojiko if Nami is her sister, Nojiko answers no.
From this sentence, we don't exactly know where Nami came from.
So I theorized that Nami came from the past thanks to the previous user of the Toki Toki Devil Fruit.
Perhaps this was the predecessor before Toki ate this fruit.
Her ancestors from an ancient city on the moon named Birka transferred to the blue planet and possibly first landed on a sky island, which they later renamed as Birka. After that, Nami's ancestors descended to the East Blue Sea and eventually built the Oikot Kingdom. I think Nami is half of Birka on the moon the Blue Sea. One day, Nami's parents were in danger, so only Nami was sent to the future using the ability of the Toki Toki Devil Fruit.
That's my entire theory, and now I'll explain why I theorized this way.
First, let's consider the character model for Nami.
Does anything come to mind? Some may have already noticed.
Yes, it could be Son Goku. Nami possesses the Klima Tokt, a staff that can extend to various lengths depending on the pressure applied to its center grip. This feature could be inspired by Goku's Noibo. Additionally, in a scene where Nami extends the Klima Tokt, a monkey-like mink is drawn, which could be a foreshadowing by Oda Sensei. And in the Whole Cake Island and Wano sagas, what did Nami obtain?
Zeus.
On the other hand, what does Goku possess?
Kintown.
Nami doesn't use Zeus as a means of transportation, but Big Mom was riding him like Goku.
This is just my hypothesis.
But do you remember in the One Piece manga where one of Goku's technique was once inspired? It was Reigo by Enel, not the Force Sphere of Lucario.
This attack was created from clouds and thunder.
Perhaps in the final arc, Nami will also use this move because she possesses a cloud and a staff that can produce thunder. She could call it Denki Dama like Goku's Genki Dama. Let's take a look at Goku's past. He was found by Son Gohan and became his father. Gohan raised him as Son Goku, but his real name is Kakarot.
This circumstance is very similar to Nami's.
She was found by Nojiko and Belma became her mother. Nami was raised by Belma, but her real name has not been revealed yet.
Now you may understand why I theorized that Nami's ancestors came from the moon. And where does Goku come from?
He comes from another star, planet Vegeta.
So I think her birth is associated with the moon, and possibly other planets.
But these planets have not been mentioned in the story of One Piece so far, so I am theorizing that his ancestors came from the moon.
But maybe you have a doubt.
Why birka?
There could be many other cities on the moon. We can find a clue from the SBS of volume 56.
Oda Sensei has assigned each of the Mugiwara characters to a country in our world.
Luffy is Brazil, perhaps because he likes music and partying.
Oda Sensei may have overlapped Lopofi and the Brazilian carnival. Zoro is Japan.
This is convincing.
His origin was revealed in the SBS of volume 105, the Shimotsuki family, the daimyo of Wano. Since the model for Wano is Japan, Zoro should be Japan.
On the other hand, Nami is Sweden.
I don't know why Oda Sensei chose Sweden for Nami, but I noticed one thing. In Sweden, there is a city called Birka, which is included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. Birka forms an archaeological complex that illustrates the elaborate trading network of the Vikings in Europe and their fundamental influence on the history of Scandinavia.
If Nami's origin is Birka in the world of One Piece, we could understand why Oda Sensei chose Sweden for Nami.
For this reason, I theorized that Nami's ancestors came from the ancient lunar city of Birka, but I should also explain why I theorized that Nami came from the past.
In chapter 627, when Nami meets Shirahoshi, she says to Nami, "It's strange, Nami-chin-sama, I know this is only our first meeting, but I feel like we're already friends." This sentence is one of the great mysteries that Oda Sensei left in the story of One Piece. Why did Shirahoshi feel this way? I have a theory.
I think Shirahoshi has a memory like the sea god, Poseidon. Neptune explains in chapter 967, every 100 years, the sea god, Poseidon, is reborn, who possesses the power to communicate with and control sea kings. Her power that could destroy the world is dormant in the body of a pure maiden. On the other hand, the sea kings say in chapter 968, our sovereign is about to be born. From these sentences, Shirahoshi should be the ruler of the sea kings, and it means she could be the reincarnation of Poseidon. In that case, she may have inherited the memories of the Poseidons in the past along with her power.
And one of the previous Poseidons may have met Nami's parents.
So Shirahoshi felt like they were already friends. But can one of Nami's ancestors and Poseidon in the past be friends? For me, yes.
Because the poneglyph that indicates the position of Poseidon was protected by the Shandians. So when Nami's ancestors descended, they may have been stopped in Chandra.
Because probably people of the ancient city Birka on the moon landed together, and they must have had a relationship between the citizens of Birka and Shandians until Shandians closed its territory. What do you think is the biggest mystery about Nami?
For me, it's her incredible navigation skills.
Nami is an incredibly talented navigator who can perform complicated calculations in just a few minutes in order to predict the surrounding environment, accurately perceiving things like humidity, temperature, and even pressure oscillations.
This allows her to sense the approach of a storm on the Grand Line. For example, at Logue Town.
Vivi was impressed by Nami's abilities and even stated that she had never met a navigator like her before.
So why do you think Nami was born with such talent? I believe she was born in an era where that ability was necessary. In what sense?
I think Nami was transported to Luffy's era from 800 years ago or even further back, at least before the era of Toki.
I'm not sure if navigation technology was advanced at that time, but I don't think it was.
In One Piece Yellow, Nami says, in ancient times, when there was no navigation technique, we could only sail within the visible range of people. However, even if this theory is valid, Nami's ancestors had to travel from Birka to the Oikot Kingdom. Birka is directly above the Grand Line, so in order to reach the Oikot Kingdom from Birka, they would have had to navigate from the Grand Line to the East Blue, even though navigation technology did not exist at that time, as Nami mentioned in One Piece Yellow. So how did Nami's ancestors manage to navigate? They had the ability to perceive humidity, temperature, and even pressure oscillations like Nami. Then they miraculously managed to reach the East Blue where the Oikot Kingdom is located. Do you know the meaning of Oikot in Japanese? Yes, Oikot means not Tokyo or the opposite of Tokyo. This word represents the charm of rural areas that Tokyo does not possess. For example, you can own your home thanks to cheap land, and you can use your life effectively thanks to proximity to work, housing, and play.
Literally the opposite.
Tokyo. Oikot. Chandra was prosperous for over 1,100 years up to 800 years ago.
It must have been during this period that Wano country was called the Golden Country. These islands are located on the Grand Line.
So, following my theory, for over 1,100 years up to 800 years ago, there was a huge continent on the Grand Line that was thriving. This continent may have had large cities like Tokyo. Instead, Nami's descendants reached the East Blue and founded a kingdom called Oikot. Anyway, I have a theory about the East Blue. In my opinion, the East Blue is very important to know the truth about the world history of One Piece. So, if you're interested in this theory, let me know by giving a like. If we reach 1,000 likes, I'll share more details.
Furthermore, to support this theory, let's look at something else. Do you remember what happened to Nami after leaving Little Garden?
She was bitten by a Kestia and became terribly ill. In chapter 139, Koiha asks Nami, "Don't tell me you were hiking in the mysterious forests of a prehistoric island?"
But Nami wasn't the only one hiking.
Perhaps, since Nami was born before the 800-year mark, her body may not have been immune to the Kestia's venom.
However, it's more natural to think that only she was affected by the Kestia.
Therefore, for these reasons, I believe that Nami's ancestors are the lunar people, birka, and she was transported more than 800 years ago.